Welcome back to my channel. Today I will have a little chat with you about shading and highlights, and every time when I watch the video, when I just started coloring at the beginning of my coloring journey, I really felt overwhelmed. And after watching a video and I understand what they said, and watching at my coloring pages that I wanted to dive in, I was feeling, there is so much that I have to consider. And yeah, before diving in my page, and that kind of throw me off, and it resulted in a coloring block or anything. And I want you to learn how to shade because really it makes a huge difference on your pages, but it must to be fun. And it really don't need to be overwhelming, and it needs to be something, you slowly learning a little by little and discover a little bit more every time. So I will show you some of the pages that I've colored, how I did the shading and without worrying too much. I will also show you things that you can use little tricks, and yeah, let's dive in. Let's see. First, I like to show you a really helpful way of coloring with shading. And it is in this beautiful book by Tim Jeffs. And basically, he does all the shading for you. So you don't have to worry about it. You can follow along on the pages and having fun. I forget to put my chair next to me, so I have no room to put my books. Yeah, I'm sorry. So in Tim Jeffs books, there are a lot of coloring pages. Well, 25 in the second, third, fourth, fifth part of the series, and in the first book there are 50. So yeah, and what he does, he produces grayscale images for you. And a lot of people thinking, grayscale, it is really hard and I don't know how to color it. And well, it is easy to color, really. And you don't have to worry about it. And all the shading is already done. So you can base it with a water-based medium and have a great result without putting too much effort in. You can cover it up with pastels, palm pastels or pastel pencils, and you will have a great coverage. You can throw down a lot of inks and you will have a great result. So I think it's a very great way to start, and you can see the grayscale at the part. He darkened it up, he shaded it for you, and all the parts are really white and light and it's highlighted. So when you add in some of the colors, the shading is done for you. Automatically, the darker parts are darker, lighter parts are lighter, and you have great results. And it doesn't matter with what you throw down. This is with Prismacolor pencils, and all I've done is adding a dark color at the shaded parts and using a lighter blue at the highlighted parts of the page, at the picture, and be okay with it. It's so much fun. This elephant, I've colored it with one color. It's Albrecht Dürer pencils. I think it's a sepia color. And I based it. Put more pigment in the shaded parts, less pigment on the highlighted parts, and I activated it with water. And I created this more realistic looking elephant without worrying too much about shading. He is really telling you, you have to put more shading here and less on this place. When I was coloring it on my own, I'm sure I also put in this fold more shading, and then it might be not looking right. I don't know. Another one, just to show you. He draw in all the shading and the highlights in the fur. You base it with some neo colors or Graphitins, I think it's graphitins. And you can create this nice flowy fur of the animal. Happy with the result of it. It is so much fun to play in this book, and it's really helpful to learn how to shade. You can really see the highlights, and it's helpful. So this is a great scale coloring book. Then we will put it on the floor. Let's move on to Kirby. Because Kirby does a wonderful job in his work, in his art, to shade for you. He will draw in a lot of lines where you have to put your shading. I can show you the page that I'm coloring. I did this on video, so you can follow along, and I will do exactly the same for all the others. But you can see, if you compare it, let me remove the tag. So if you compare this one, you clearly can see there is more black lines on the artwork, on the page, underneath here. So you know you have to put your darker colors down on the page on this place. Also under the arm there's more shading. Under the leg there's more shading, so you can put down your darker colors, right? And then you can create this effect without overthinking things, because he already guides you through it. Also on the tree there is a lot of shading, pencil lines, drawing for the back of this tree, this branch. You can see under this one. Follow along, put your lighter colors in the highlighted parts, and you will have a great result. Kirby is a great place to start without needing to think. But you can make it really difficult for yourself. I will have the midtone Morphia for example. Sometimes we like to add in a sunset or sunrise. And if you put it on the sky behind the mountains, because for this sky you will put it behind, right? It means the light is coming from the back. So everything on the front of the page will have sunlight from the back. So the trees will be light up at the back. So we will watch from this side to a very dark tree, a very dark picture. And I know it's your coloring book, you can do whatever you want, and that's not a problem, but I like to think about it more and learn a little bit about it for myself. So having the sun this way coming up, it will maybe hit this part, but the rest of this bird will be very dark, because this side of the world you're standing in is dark against the sunlight. I hope it makes sense. If you draw in, well, pick up another page to make it more clear. I can pick up this one. If you want to play around with the sunlight, you can just color it, don't worry about it. Maybe you like it that the sun is coming from this side, right? This side is the sun coming from. And to remind yourself what is the side that you want your highlights, you can put a sticky note. I like to use it because I always forget it, and then I'm halfway my page and my shading is all messed up, and well, I'm okay with it, but it happens a lot to me. But if you put your sunlight this way, you know everything is lighted from this side of the page to this way. You can start adding the shading. Let me point it out on everything that the sun is hitting from this side, right? This one is in front of this one, so there will be a shading, a shadow, because this one is blocking it. So you can put on the shading on this side, and then you can the highlights, and then changing your pencil, the darker, and pick up the darker and start shading from this side to the other side and tackle everything that you encounter. Like this part will be darker, and yeah, because this is in the back and this one is at the front, there will be shading behind this one, there will be shading behind the girl, and color it this way, and then using some midtones. And yeah, it's a little trick to help you so you won't forget it. But you have to put down your shades when you start coloring. Sometimes, well, most of the times I don't like it to start with my shading. I think it's really hard to start with the shading. I like to, yeah, put my shading in the end of the page to get it complete. In this book, I started with some highlights when I was learning. So this is an older page, and the highlight that I created was around this candle. And I remember that I was really proud of it. And looking at it now, yeah, it's a little silly shading, because there is no way this candle is creating so much highlight on this berry, right? This one is, yeah, it's okay, but you can clearly see what I mean by adding the highlights first. So before I was coloring the mice, I put the yellow highlights already, so I won't forget how to put it down and where I want the highlights. And there's some of the yellow glow on the bed. There's a little bit on the leaves. There's everywhere a little bit of the yellow shading, and it will fade the intensity of the shading when you move away from the candle. This way it can be helpful when you're first starting and trying to shade. And you can see I added some extra shading under the bed in all the little things around the blanket on the floor, and yeah, it was really helpful to color it this way. That's a way to do it and how to learn and getting better at it every time. Sometimes I like to add the shading at the end of the page, and that's what I've done on this page. I've colored this a while ago already, I think almost 2 years, and that's no problem. You can see I've colored the sketchbook in the back, and I went on top with espresso color, sorry. And I used a lot of the espresso color. I think espresso is a great color to shade, to put your shading and your shadows. And you can see every little part of this page that I wanted to have more depth. I added this espresso color, and I think it's working very well, especially on those pumpkins. That is something you can do. I've added some of the paint pen to create some extra highlights. That can be working very well. I also colored the page in Manuel de Bonheur a while ago when I was really happy with the shading that I've used. And I didn't take a place of the sun in my head for this one. Really, I didn't. I didn't want to think about it. I added a lot of the espresso color all the way at the end. So you can see I was simply looking what's on top of each other and put the shading underneath. So this one was in front, this one was underneath, and I added some extra shading with the espresso. There were some folds in this bag, so I put the shading underneath. In this dress there were some folds in the fabric, and like you can see in my own sleeve. In the folds it's darker and there are highlights on top. So I tried to create it also on my page. I all shaded it in the end. Also with this towel. And I'm really happy with the look of it. there is a lot of shading in the folds of the fabric, and I lighten it up on the edge. And you even can put a Posca highlight all the way on the edge and get rid of the illustration and create an extra depth on the page. You can see around the headband I shaded a little bit in the fur. So I basically shaded underneath everything to create the impression of highlights and shading on the page without overthinking it too much and having a lot of fun while coloring, and I'm still very happy with the result of this page. And recently, I think last month, I've colored this one and I messed up this page, and I will let you look at the page for just a little while. Maybe you can spot it. So there's shading, right? And I think it's from this side. Maybe this way. The shading is hitting the face. So this is the highlight, and you can see, yes, this is the highlight of the face. The sun is hitting it. This one is in the highlight, this one, and there is the shading on the back of everything. But how is it possible if the sun is hitting it here? This shield is on his back, and it got all those highlights. It's not possible, right? And I think, it's a mistake. It's not bothering me, but learning about it and thinking about it, I can spot it. The same with this one. The highlight is here. It's not really in line, so it's had to be different, I think. There's no really highlights on the cucumbers. It is fine. It is a coloring book. I had a lot of fun. So there is a lot you can do about shading. Which pencils do you want to choose for the shading? I already talked about it a little. So I personally like to add in the espresso color from the Prismas. I think it's a perfect one for the shading color, overall shading, and give it a soft look. But sometimes you are looking for a more harsh shadow, more darker shadow, and it's perfect to add in black. If you don't want the black, you can add in the indigo blue or change it a little up. I know there are some great shading colors in the Derwent Lightfast pencils, but you can use a lot of the gray tones in pencils. And how do you use them? How do you use gray tones? What's the difference about cool grays, warm grays, French grays we find in the Prisma color set? Or well, there's a little trick you can remind, and how I like to do it. Everything living, I use warm grays. Everything is a thing, like a sharpener, I like to use cool grays. So if you take a look at the Polygomos chart, there are two sets of grays, right? This is the cold one, so I will choose those colors if I'm shading things. And I will go for the warm gray when I'm shading living things like animals, humans, plants. It's an easy one to remind, and I think living things giving some warmth. So that's why I go for this one. It gives more a natural look. In the Prismacolor pencils, we have warm gray, we have cool gray, and we have French gray. The fun thing is, when I'm coloring with my Prismas, I always color my living things with a French gray. And if you take the warm gray range from the Polygomos, you can see those are really close. There's a little tint of brown inside, a little bit warmer than the warm grays in the Polygomos, because they work really great for living things. The warm gray will also work, but yeah, it's kind of in between, I think. If you have to compare it, it's kind of in between compared to the Polygomos. Those both will work great for living things, but I like this especially for humans and animals, and yeah, and the cold grays, of course, for things. So that was a little tip that I wanted to give you, how to use those grays for the shading, and yeah, don't forget to have a lot of fun. And yeah, I hope to see you next time. Thank you for watching. Bye.